Hello and welcome to Tioga County PA Career Links Effective Interviewing Workshop. Most of the time we think that we are ready for an interview. However, we have no idea how cutthroat the competition is. In this workshop, we'll be talking about things to do before, during, and after an interview. We'll touch on behavioral interviewing, as well as providing a resource for you to continue practicing. The three areas we'll be discussing are preparing for an interview, impressing the interviewer, and communicating throughout the process. Preparing is the most essential step in the interview process. You need to study the job description of the job that you have applied for and you're interviewing for. The job description is full of helpful information such as the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics needed for the position. Match your skill set to the skill set required for that job. Understand where you've utilized those skills, that knowledge, those abilities, and save them for stories later on when we discuss behavioral interviewing skills. You can create a portfolio. This could include a few copies of your resume, as well as examples of your work, such as PowerPoint slides from presentations. It could also include letters or any other tangible work that you can show in the interview. Another essential step in preparing is to research the company. Go to their About Us page on their website. Look at what their mission, their vision statements are. Does it match well with what you're looking for, what you're seeking? What kind of products do they sell? Do they sell a service? Are they based locally, globally? Researching the company is going to come in handy when the employer asks you what you know about them. Ready yourself for multiple questions. If you're preparing enough, you should have multiple stories that would work for many questions. Preparing yourself and practicing is what is going to help you the most in building your confidence so you can go into that interview and come out successful. Next, we're going to talk about types of interviews. The first interview we're going to talk about is a phone interview. A phone interview is usually the first step in the hiring process. It doesn't cost the employer much money, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. The best thing to do with phone interviews is to practice. Have a relative or a friend give you a call and ask you interview questions over the phone. Get comfortable talking and answering questions over the phone. Phone interviews are awesome. You don't have to dress up for them. However, you also don't have the other face on the other side of the table agreeing with what you're saying. This will also include some awkward silence because the interviewer is taking notes. I suggest standing up when you're on the phone. It's going to help build your confidence in your voice. You want to avoid any ums or ahs or background noise, as they will be amplified in the phone interview. You can use your notes and have a copy of your resume in front of you so you can easily answer the questions that are being asked. Virtual interviews is another type of interview an employer would utilize to save some time and money. There are many different platforms such as Zoom Meeting, Skype, FaceTime. So make sure that you are familiar with those platforms and practice with them. As you can see in the picture, this individual has a nice, clean, crisp background. You want to make sure that you keep your background professional. Be mindful of the lighting. In the picture, we are able to see the individual well. If you don't have good lighting and you have a lot of background noise, it's going to be hard for the interviewer to hear what you're saying, and it's going to be hard for them to see you as well. You'll want to make eye contact during the virtual interviews and utilize those soft skills. So have a friend or relative give you a call via Skype or Zoom so that you can practice and make sure that your background is well lit and professional. The last interview I'll be talking about is a stress interview. A stress interview is just that. The employer is trying to put you under stress to see how you can handle the pressure. These come in handy if you are applying for sales positions. A good example of a stress interview would be a travel agency. They may hand you a pamphlet and ask you to present a 30-minute persuasive speech on why they should attend a certain destination. Maybe you're in a panel interview where there's multiple individuals asking you questions. Maybe you're in a group interview where you're sitting next to someone on both sides and you have to prove why the employer should hire you instead of the person next to you. A good way to handle stress interviews is to stay cool, calm, and collected. In the long run, employers are only trying to see how you handle the stress. If you need more time to think about how you're going to answer the question, you can clarify the question. You can communicate what it is you're thinking. You really ultimately want to focus on the way you're going to solve the problem and refuse to show any emotion of being intimidated. The next step in effective interviewing is impressing. We're going to be talking about our appearance, soft skills, as well as our attitude. With your appearance, you want to dress for success. I always suggest 2 steps higher than what everyone else is wearing in that office. You can go to their website and see the pictures of the individuals on the website and base your judgment off of that. Be mindful of artifacts. So this would be jewelry, too much jewelry, maybe big watches, crazy ties. Make sure that you keep them to a minimum. Otherwise, the employer is going to be looking at everything else going on instead of listening to what you're saying. Avoid perfume and cologne. Try not to overpower your perfume or your cologne, as you will not know if you're going to be interviewing in a small area or a big area. Remember, first impressions matter. You want to be mindful of your soft skills. How are you answering the questions? Are you answering them effectively? Do you understand the question and give them the correct answer? Are you making that eye contact? And most of all, don't forget to smile. Attitude is another area that we need to look at. Make sure that you're staying positive and showing confidence. Avoid answering questions negatively. For instance, if the employer asks you what you didn't like about your last job or your last employer, think of positive answers instead of negative. All in all, show interest. Most of the time, employers are just looking for someone who's going to enjoy the job. Communicating is a huge piece of effective interviewing. The employer needs to find out if you're going to be effective at communicating. So the communication that you provide during, before, and after an interview is essential. We'll talk a little bit about elevator pitch, behavior interview questions, the STAR technique, and thank you notes. An elevator pitch is a 30 to 60 second commercial. So if you think of an infomercial and cut it down to 30 to 60 seconds, it should include who you are, so what business you're in, what's your background. It should include some of your achievements that relate to the job you're applying for or interviewing for. How do you provide value to your employer? Why are you worth your paycheck? What are some of those achievements? And lastly, include your qualifications. Why are the benefits you provide exceptional, unique, compared to others? What makes you special? What's your chief qualification? This should be something that you practice and are able to repeat right off the top of your head so that it comes naturally. Behavior-based interviewing is a new technique that employers are utilizing. This is where an employer will ask you questions based on your past behavior to try and predict what your future behavior might be. So they'll provide you questions about how you act in a hypothetical situation. Some examples of behavioral interview questions would be, tell me about how you worked effectively under pressure. How did you handle a challenge? They may ask for an example. Have you ever made a mistake? How did you handle it? Give an example of a goal you've reached and tell me how you've achieved it. Describe a decision you made that wasn't popular and explain how you handled implementing it. Would you hire you for this job? Why? So these are those behavioral interview questions that you may get at your next interview. Next, we'll talk about the STAR technique. I have a video clip of Pamela. She's from our big interview, and she's going to talk to you about behavioral interview questions as well as the STAR technique. She'll also provide an example.
This is an important lesson because it's all about behavioral questions. Most companies include behavioral questions in the interview process. These are all of those questions that start with, tell me about a time, give me an example, and similar. This is where you can use your storytelling skills to stand out from the competition. You have to be able to show your accomplishments in the best possible light. That means crafting stories, true stories of course, that show you at your best, that prove you're qualified for this job, and demonstrate you would be a pleasure to work with. It's really hard to come up with this kind of compelling story spontaneously in an interview. That's why a little preparation can make such a huge difference. Behavioral questions are any questions that focus on your past behaviors as indicators of future performance. So the secret to doing well with these questions is all about storytelling. And why storytelling? We're much more likely to become engaged with information in the form of a story. People are also much more likely to respond to and remember information when it's presented in the form of a story. The other thing about storytelling that's relevant here is that stories engage the right brain. They trigger the imagination, and that makes a listener feel like a participant in the narrative. And that makes the person much more likely to connect with you, to feel interested in you. So let's get into some of the best practices for writing these compelling interview stories. The STAR approach has been used for years in many industries to analyze behavioral answers from candidates. And it's a useful way to think about structuring your answers as well. STAR stands for situation, task, approach, and results. These are the elements that we want to cover in each and every story. Years ago, I started using STAR with my interview coaching clients, and it works like a charm to simplify and focus the narrative. I've used it for thousands of clients between my individual clients and the workshops that I conduct. People come back time and again telling me about how much more confident they felt and how much better they performed once they had those STAR stories. It takes a little planning. Most interview examples are not naturally bite-sized, concise stories that you can deliver in 1 to 2 minutes. Often you're talking about a complex project that went on for weeks or even months. So how do you know which details to mention, which details to leave out, what order to put them in? That's where STAR comes in. The Big Interview Answer Builder will help guide you through the process of creating your STAR stories. Check it out after you learn the best practices in this lesson so you can put the learning into practice. The first step in developing these brilliant STAR interview stories is to figure out what experiences from your past are going to make the best stories. I find the best approach is to start with your greatest hits. If you try to come up with a story for every possible behavioral question out there, you'll get overwhelmed quickly. Instead, focus first on your best stories, as these can typically be used for a variety of different questions. Start by listing your proudest professional accomplishments. Think of those projects where you really excelled, maybe a situation that led to a promotion, anytime that you tackled a really difficult task and succeeded, like a negotiation or resolving an important customer issue or making a tough decision. Choose the stories that feature your greatest accomplishments, because those impressive stories each tend to demonstrate multiple competencies. Think about that project that required leadership, communication skills, problem solving, and attention to detail. That story can be adapted for different behavioral questions. Once you've got your greatest hit stories identified, you'll also want to think about the competencies required for the job at hand. The job description will help with this. If innovation is in the job description, of course, you want to make sure you have a story prepared that showcases your ability to innovate. Once you have a list of stories to develop, it's time to sit down and flesh them out using that simple STAR format. Naturally, we're going to start with part 1, ST, which stands for situation, task. The idea here is to give the interviewer some context, some background, just what they need to know to make the rest of the story make sense. Resist the temptation to go into too much detail here. Just enough to clarify your role and ensure understanding of the difficulty, complexity, and/or size of the challenge. This is important so they'll be properly impressed. This first part is just drawing them in and providing a foundation so the rest of the story makes sense. What were you trying to achieve and why? Now let's talk about A, approach, part 2 of our story. Here's where we describe the actions that you took to complete the task, solve the problem, address the issue, improve the situation. Why did you do what you did? What was the strategy behind it? This will help show what you're like on the job, how you approach things, and how you think. You'll want to mention relevant skills used and competencies demonstrated, because this can really help to underline your abilities and your strengths. Tell them about the competencies you demonstrated. Don't be too modest to spell it out. Just remember to stay focused on key details and avoid going off on tangents. Next is time for the very important final part, your results. Every good story has a happy ending. You need to emphasize a positive outcome for this story, not only to show that you're results-driven, but also to end in a nice, crisp, confident way. First, be sure to mention any tangible results. That could be revenue generated, cost reduced, time saved, promotion earned, client won, client saved, anything that you can talk about that's tangible. Interviewers love hard numbers, hard facts, but you can also talk about and Ray was then a story that uses a STAR format. This should help you see how it all fits together, and these were demonstrated in each example. This will help you categorize your stories and know when to use which examples. I'm a big believer that you should have stories that are multi-purpose, but you have to know which stories are the best fits for each competency area. Now let's look at a sample interview story that uses a STAR format. This should help you see how it all fits together and how you can create similar stories about your own experiences. One note here, when you're writing this out, there's no need for you to write out exactly what you would say. Your written version is going to be more of a rough set of bullet points. Then, as you practice, You'll start to find your rhythm and put it all together in a way that feels natural. Situation task. In my current role as an assistant account manager, I support my boss on our company's biggest corporate account, which brought in $2 million in revenue this year. Recently, my boss was traveling and I got a frantic call from Ray, our client contact, that he was not able to log into our system to run reports that he needed by the end of the day. Now, this was a Friday at 3 p.m. and my boss was on a plane to London. Ray was very upset when he heard that my boss was unavailable, and I knew I had to figure out a way to help him or things could get ugly. Great. This situation task jumps right into the action. We're not going into a lot of detail about who Ray was, the history of the system, nothing that's not relevant. Another good thing about this story is that it's got some nice urgency and drama. If you can inject that into your stories, that's going to help you as well. Now on to A, approach. The first thing I did was apologize to Ray about the inconvenience. I gave him a chance to vent a bit and reassured him that I would do whatever was humanly possible to resolve the problem for him. I called our help desk, but the technician told me that the issue would have to go into the queue, and she was very busy. So I decided to go wait outside the office of our customer support director, the technician's boss, until he could see me. I then explained the situation and expressed how important it was for us to find a solution as soon as possible for our #1 client. I then set up a conference call with Ray and our customer support director, and working together, we were able to identify the cause of the problem, which was related to Ray's company's security settings. Okay, that's a pretty good overview of what the candidate did and why, focusing on skills demonstrated. First, client communication skills, then sense of urgency, proactive problem solving, and persistence. Finally, taking the lead while the boss was away and a focus on getting things done. Good stuff. Now the results of our story. We adjusted the settings right there while we were on the phone, and Ray was then able to run his report and meet his deadline. Later that day, Ray sent an email praising me for my work, CCing my boss and the CEO of our company. Ray said I saved the day for him with my persistence and excellent customer service skills. Our CEO called me to congratulate me on my quick thinking and tell me to keep up the good work. Lots of good stuff here. We solved the problem, the client was happy, we're actually quoting the client here. So especially if you're someone who is a little bit more humble by nature and you have a hard time saying great things about yourself, quote other people saying them. To me, this story presents this candidate as someone who's a strong fit for a job that requires customer service, communication, problem solving, quick thinking, being proactive. Lots of competencies here. So that gives you a good idea of what a good star story can do for you. A great interview story is going to showcase your strengths, a little bit of your personality, and also help you establish rapport with the interviewer. So now that you've seen the STAR format in action, I'm sure your mind is racing, thinking of all the great examples that you can plug into this framework and prepare for your upcoming interview. The Big Interview Answer Builder will walk you right through and help you generate those stories. You'll also find additional examples on Big Interview if you need more inspiration to get started. And don't forget, once you finalize your stories, it's time to practice. Telling the story out loud is an important final component to help you remember your key points.
So that, in a nutshell, is the STAR technique. And that would be helping communicate throughout the interview. We also need to communicate after the interview. The best way to communicate after the interview is to send a follow-up thank you email, or you can mail a letter as well. Make sure that you create a clear subject line. Know who you're writing to by collecting contact information at the end of the interview. Open with a personal greeting. Express your appreciation that they took the time to meet with you. Think about things specifically that you related to and you're interested in finding out more about. Also keep in mind, being able to remember something you specifically talked about with the interviewer will be helpful information to include in a thank you email. Let them know that you can always provide additional information if they need that information to help figure out who to hire. And then at the end, you want to make sure that you're closing out with a professional sign-off. Sincerely is usually what most people will go for. Here's an example of a thank you email. The subject line of this email is thank you, and then they included the job title that they were interviewing for, Assistant Account Executive Interview. The professional opening is Dear Mr. or Miss last name. You'll have this information as long as you remember to collect that contact information at the end of the interview. It was very enjoyable to speak with you today about the assistant account executive position at the Smith Agency. The job seems to be an excellent match for my skills and interests. The creative approach to account management that you described confirmed my desire to work with you. In addition to my enthusiasm, I will bring to the position strong writing skills, assertiveness, and the ability to encourage others to work cooperatively with the department. I appreciate the time you took to interview me. I am very interested in working for you and look forward to hearing from you regarding the position. Sincerely, and then the contact information. Now again, you will alter this for whatever interview you were on and the information that was discussed during that interview. But this is a good basic idea and example of an interview thank you email. Make sure to send the email out within 24 hours of your interview. Next, we're going to go over some general interview tips. A good tip would be to map out your route to the interview site. That way you know you'll be able to make it there on time. You'll know what time to leave to get there on time. And think of any problems that you might hit that might make you a little late. Have backup plans in case any of those scenarios play out. Be sure to be in appropriate business attire. Refer to your achievements often before the interview. Continuing practicing answering questions is going to help you remember those achievements. This will help build up the confidence that you'll need to walk into the interview with your head held high. Know answers to the probable questions. Again, have answers for various and multiple different questions that could possibly be asked. Like Pamela said, you should have a list of your greatest hits that pertain to the job you're interviewing for, that could be utilized for different questions. Ensure that you are practicing. So I say this 3 times. Practice, practice, practice. They say if you say something 3 times, you'll remember it. Utilizing the big interview resource will help you practice for these interviews. Prepare some questions for the employer. At the end of the interview, the employer usually will ask, do you have any questions for us? This is where you get to put them on the spot. Ask them questions about the average day in this position. What are the most difficult tasks? What do they enjoy most about this position? It's your time to put them in the spotlight and see if you're going to be a good fit for them. Make sure that you send that thank you note within 24 hours of your interview. The Big Interview is a fantastic resource that is free to you because you are registered with the PA Career Link. Here's a quick overview of the Big Interview.
Don't fool yourself. You're not ready for your next job interview. You have no idea how cutthroat the competition really is, and most candidates are vastly underprepared. But don't worry, Big Interview can help turn you into the perfect candidate quickly and easily. Big Interview was developed by Pamela Skillings, one of the world's top interview coaches. She's helped thousands of clients from all industries and all experience levels ace their interviews and land their dream jobs. Now you can learn this proven way to master the art of the job interview. Pamela will hold your hand through video lessons covering every aspect of the interview process and coach you through exercises that have made the dramatic difference for her clients. She'll help you craft your behavioral stories, prepare your sales pitch, anticipate tough questions. And most importantly, Coach Pam will guide you through practicing with Big Interview's cutting-edge mock interview tool. It's time to take your fate into your own hands. Listen to your coach and get the edge over all those other candidates. Try out Big Interview today, and you could land your dream job tomorrow.
So next I'm going to show you how to get into the Big Interview. Once you get logged into your PA CareerLink account, you will see the blue ribbon at the top. In the blue ribbon, you'll go to Career Services. There are various services, but we're going to click on Interview Training. You'll scroll down to the bottom of the page and you'll either click Enter or Yes, Register. A disclaimer pop-up will pop up. If you do not get a disclaimer, you'll need to deactivate your pop-up blocker in order to continue to the Big Interview website. Once you get to the website, you'll see that there is a fast track. So this would be utilized if you have interviews coming up soon, and a mastery track that you can take time and learn all of the video lessons. Under practice, you have practice interviews, interview roulette, the answer builder, and then a question library. When you utilize practice interviews, you're going to be recording yourself answering those interview questions. Click on My Videos to see them. They also have a resume builder. So this is an excellent resource to utilize, and it's free, no cost to you as a registered job seeker in the PA CareerLink system. So just to wrap up everything that we've discussed, you know yourself and you know what skills you have to offer that employer. You know that it's matching the job that you're applying for and interviewing for because you've done your research. You've researched the organization, so you know the history and where you're going to benefit the organization or company in the position that you're interviewing for. You've prepared a professional resume, which reflects exactly what the employer is looking for. You've practiced, and practiced your delivery. You've utilized Big Interview. You've selected the appropriate tire. You have your answers in your back pocket for probable questions, including behavioral-based questions. You've practiced your smile, your eye contact, and your firm handshake. You've made it to the interview site on time because you thought of and brainstormed of anything that might hinder you in getting there on time. And you know that the organization could not live without you. Now it's time for you to take this information, utilize the Big Interview, and put your best foot forward. Thank you for taking the time to review this workshop. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube page for any upcoming workshops, and follow us on Facebook at pacl.tioga. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us via Facebook Messenger, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you and have a great day.